جزاك الله خير ماجد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته everyone. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
وعليكم
Yep.
السلام.
So thank you very much for inviting me to talk a little bit about the supervisor and student contract, and especially what is it that student can expect from a supervisor and vice versa. I know it's a little bit kind of a touchy subject, but inshallah we'll try to shed a little bit more light about what it is. I have wanted to put a little bit more emphasis on from the supervisor side, and you will see there are different types of supervisors. You have supervisors who want to be very hands-on, and then you have other supervisors who may want to be very hands-off. So some of the things that I will be saying today will comprise a little bit of my own personal experience. So the way the presentation will go today, I'll talk a little bit about the PhD process, because I'm not sure whether some of you in the audience are already PhD students or whether there are some MSc students with it, at least among us. So for those of you who are doing MSc and are thinking about a PhD, I thought I'll talk a little bit about the PhD process. I will touch a little bit on the student expectation, and during the Q&A, I would be very happy to hear a little bit from your side. What is it that you expect from a supervisor? And then I can tell you whether is it good, is it too much, is it not enough? I can give you some guidance as so that you can have, let's say, realistic expectation. And then I will tell you a little bit about supervisor expectation. Now, like I've said, there are different types of supervisors. I will give you in general what I would tend to expect from student, right? But I'm pretty sure that will be most supervisors will tend to agree with what I have written. And then I will talk a little bit about the general research environment, how the research environment within the department or within your research group will help you towards achieving your PhD. And then, like I said, it will contain my own perspective. Some of them will be general and some of them will be actually personal. I don't mind if you send questions, but whatever question, if you put in the chat, I can always take it during the Q&A session afterwards. Thank you. So the PhD process, the PhD is the highest level of academic qualification one can get, right? So you can't go even for a postdoc. If you want to go for a postdoc after your PhD, you don't get any certificate with that. So basically with a PhD, that's the highest level for which you end up getting a certificate for. In the UK, your doctoral study will take a maximum of 4 years. If you go to the US, it may take anything between 5 to 8 years. I know of people who have gone for 10 years, all right? In some sense, what it shows is it takes a long time to complete that project. It's not a project that when you go out to work or when you take up a job that I don't think you will end up having a project that will last that many years, right? So it gives you some experience that potentially will never be replicated during your working lifetime. So for this, you will need to have a special preparation. So a special project of 4 years long or 4 years duration will require kind of special preparation. So because of that, so what is it that's required for a PhD? Yeah, so of course you require a research project. For those who are, if we have MSc students among us, when you apply for a PhD place within a department, you will need to very often produce a research proposal. The research proposal or the research project is just what is it that you want to research on? What area, what domain are you interested in? Are there specific areas that you are interested? So it provides the department with some indication as to what are the kind of topics you're interested in. Once you provide a research proposal, then when you apply for a PhD place, they can narrow down who are the people among the staff who can actually supervise that student, that applicant, right? Now, of course, If you already have a PhD place, it means that you already have hopefully you already have a research project. And then of course you will need to have a supervisor. So your supervisor, you can get a supervisor via two different routes. One, you have your own research project, you want to work in a certain area, and you find someone who wants to supervise you in that area. Or you end up saying, I don't have any research project, I don't have anything interesting, and I will just go look for a supervisor who has some interesting project that I can work on, right? So once you have a research project and a supervisor, basically you're in a good place, because it means you have potentially been accepted for a PhD place. However, what it means also is that you will have to have lots, and I mean a lot, of dedication and perseverance, right? Very often I have seen in the past when students end up applying for a PhD place with me, when they have to produce a research proposal, the research proposal is just a small extension of their MSc dissertation or their MA dissertation. You cannot be further from the truth. A PhD is totally different. It's not a one-year project. It's not a 6-month project. You end up seeing potential applicants saying they are going to do a literature review over 1 year, right? And then work on a problem for 1 year and then write their thesis for 1 year. It's not like that, right? And we will see a little bit as why it's not, it's different. A PhD is very different. In the end, you have to produce a thesis, which you will end up defending in an oral exam, right? Or what we call a viva. So these are the kind of main things that you will need to be able to show for your PhD. All of these are going to be very important. Having the right research project, having the right supervisor, right? Lots and lots of dedication and patience, and of course, producing your thesis. And we'll talk a little bit about each one of them in turn. So for your research project, right, you may want to work on a topic which is dear or interesting to you. And that's the thing which is the most important. The topic, the area that you want to work in must be interesting for you. If you're not interested in something, right, and you have to keep going for 4 years, it's going to be it's not going to be easy. If you're not interested in the topic, you might as well tell your supervisor, no, it's not something that I'm interested in, because once you start, there is no going back, because by the time you start reading, 2-3 months already gone. Yeah, you don't want to waste time. So it has to be something which you find interesting, so that you end up, it can sustain you for the next 4 years. So whether if you're in computing, you're interested in cybersecurity. If you're in literature, you're interested in, for example, Shakespeare, right? Or if you're interested in climate change, particle physics, anything, but it has to be something which interests you. You may want to work on a topic given to you by your supervisor. So now your supervisor may end up having lots and lots of different projects, right? He may have projects because he's got funding for this project. It may be a project that is dear to him, right, or her, right? Or it may be a project that he or she was doing during his PhD, but never got the chance to look deeper into that topic. So you can end up having a research project through that mean as well. What you want is when your supervisor gives you that opportunity to discuss what topic or what research project you may want to work on, you are very clear what is it that you're looking for. You are very clear with your supervisor what is it that you find interesting, what is it that you find not interesting. So it's almost like, if you go to the restaurant, you don't really want to go and eat, I don't know, Italian food. You don't want your friend to force you into going to eat Italian food, because by the end of it, you go like, I don't think it wasn't very good, right? So here it's because it's going to be a 4-year project. You want to be sure that it fits you, it suits you and your need, especially for your career afterwards. However, as opposed to the type of project you would have done during your bachelor degree or your master's degree, this project will need to be sufficiently complex that will last you for 4 years. It doesn't consist of just one problem that somehow you make it extend for 4 years. it will have to be a problem where there are several sub-problems that each and every one in its own or in their own, you'll have to find solutions to for them, right? So your project will consist of several crucial components. So it won't be just one aspect, it will be very, very often several aspects. And that's irrespective of whether we're talking about computing, engineering, humanities, right, or literature. You will need to look at a problem in, let's say, in different facets. So some of the research components that are very important, literature review, right? So the literature review is the first piece of kind of, at least it's the first activity that you will start, that will allow you to start doing your research. So literature review is crucial and it underpins everything, because as part of your, by the time you finish with your PhD, you don't get an award for the fact that you've done some research, because we do have research assistant, but you get an award, you get your certificate because you have produced new knowledge that advance the state of the art, right? The state of the art is basically what we currently know, right? And advancing state of the art means you produce knowledge that right now no one knows about it or no one has thought about it. So it's similar to the fact that if you almost like write one sentence or you rewrite one sentence to say exactly the same thing, that's not advancing the state of the art, because everybody knows that. Advancing state of the art means you have to produce knowledge which no one knows about or no one has thought about, right? Just showing the same thing through a different way doesn't really count. It has to be novel. It has to be something that no one has thought about. So to be able to know how to advance or what to advance in that state of the art, you need to know exactly where state of the art ends. Where are we right now with knowledge? So the literature review allows you to do just that. You start assessing exactly where knowledge is at this point in time. So you will need to be very, very thorough. You need to read very broadly so that you know all of the things that people have done, other researchers have done, that will allow you to know where knowledge is at this moment in time. Now, depending on the area in which you are working in. So for example, if you're doing research in computing, sometimes you may have to go way back. If you're doing, especially if you need theory, you may need to go back to the early 1960s to understand the theory or the foundational work that has been done. On the other hand, if you are doing research, let's say in AI, maybe you only need to go back 10, 15 years ago. If you're going to do a research, let's say on some poet like Shakespeare, then you may even go early 1900. So depending each topic, each domain will you will need to go back as far as needed to start building your knowledge. In general, it can take anything between 3 to 6 months to complete, right? This is something you can't rush, right? And what you will notice as well is literature review, and at least surveying literature is a constant activity throughout it will be a constant activity throughout your 4 years of PhD. Just because you've started working on your research project doesn't mean, yeah, that's it, I don't have to read anymore. You have to keep reading, because you don't know whether someone else has done exactly something that at least is doing something the way you are proceeding with it right now. And then, as I said, you have to produce novel research that will advance state of the art, right? So just going a different route to say the same thing as we know it doesn't really count, right? It has to advance, and that will take you the best part of 2.5 to 3 years, right? So 3 years to do your research, 6 months to do your literature survey, and then the other 6 months will basically be for writing the thesis, right? For writing your thesis. That's roughly. Otherwise, if you're going to finish a little bit on the early side, if you're one of the lucky students who've been able to finish your research a little bit on the early side, well, within 3 years you may have finished your your research, and then you take 6 months to do your write-up. Of course, 6 months doing a write-up doesn't mean 6 months. It can take anything between 3 months to 6 months to do your final write-up. So in your first year of PhD, you will do a literature survey, right, which is crucial to ensure that the work is novel, help you understand how to advance state of the art. And at this point in time, you will start discussion about your research project with your supervisor. That's what you will say. Well, I'm interested in cybersecurity. I'm interested in climate change. I'm interested in understanding recycling or anything, right? So then your supervisor will discuss with you about different projects he may have, or about projects he knows that he or she knows that are going to be important. And in that first year, at various points in time, together with your supervisor, you will start determining a plan of action for research. What is the initial problem that you're going to solve? What is the initial problem that you will need to look for to start working on? And in the UK, you have to produce at the end of your first year, because everybody starts with at the level of an MPhil, everybody needs to produce an upgrade report, and that PGR will have to pass that oral upgrade exam, right? So that's what your first year for a PhD in the UK will look like. And then, of course, once you've passed your upgrade and you've done your first year, and you understand what kind of research your supervisor is expecting from you, you understand the domain, you have already done all your reading, you know exactly where state of the art is, then you will have started, or you will start to conduct research. And as part of your research, maybe you'll be writing papers. One of the things that when you will write your thesis, you will see that I think on the second page, you will need to sign a disclaimer that says that research is your own, that you haven't gone somewhere and asked someone to do that research for you, that, for example, you haven't paid someone to do the research for you, or you have had so much help from somebody else that the research is not totally yours. This is one of the things which is important, that the research is yours. And of course, during your second and third year, that's when you attend conferences, you attend workshops, or you attend other scholarly meetings, such as you attend seminars, you attend colloquiums, and all that. And all of these are important because that's when you end up building your own network, you talk to other people, you discuss your problem with other like-minded people, and it's very often a very fruitful activity. And during your second and third year of your PhD, it is expected that you will be having regular meetings with your supervisor. So, and of course, we will talk about that a little bit later. Your supervisor will be expected to check on your progress, provide feedback on your ideas, and probably will read any drafts that you produce, right? Like I said, a little bit more on that later. But also, you will need to be prepared for ups and downs. For example, experiments not working as expected, right? Then of course maybe you'll feel a little bit down, but you will have ups when actually your paper has been accepted at a conference or a journal. So there are lots and lots of ups and downs, and that's the nature of the process. That's the nature of the beast, that you will have lots and lots of ups and downs, and because of that you will require lots of patience and perseverance. So your supervisor is there, especially when you're feeling down. He or she is supposed to be there to pick you up, provide you with guidance, so you can keep plodding ahead. And then in your final year, you're expected to conclude all the important research components and all the research aspects. You are expected to tie up the loose ends. You're not expected in your final year to start almost like a new research problem, to start working on your new research problem, right? You can, right? But the research problem shouldn't be like a crucial part of your work, because otherwise you will be under pressure. And then, of course, you will have to start writing your thesis, which can take up to 6 months. I tend to suggest to start early, potentially in your year 3. You can start writing on your, for example, your literature survey, right? You can start writing a little bit of your introduction. Yeah, so these are things that you can start writing on, so that by the time you have to start writing your thesis, at least part of it has already been written. And of course, writing your thesis is not like a linear process. Potentially, you may want to start writing chapter 3 first, because you have a good idea what is it that you want to write in it. And then you go and start writing your abstract, because very often you write your abstract, it helps you to focus, it helps focus your mind, right? So writing a thesis is not always a linear process where you start with your introduction and then you go chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. Whatever works for you, that's the way you go about it. And then of course you have to defend your thesis in a viva, right? Where you have, at least in the UK, you have two examiners, one internal, one external, typically, right? And then you get told whether you have passed with minors or majors. Yeah, at least most of the time. So up until now, we have seen the word supervisor being mentioned quite a few times already. So what we want is what we want about the supervisor. So all PhD projects are undertaken with the guidance of one academic supervisor. Maybe you have a co-supervisor. Maybe you have more than a single co-supervisor. But your supervisor will be your main point of contact during your PhD. So he will not only look after you after your research, but he will try to look after you in terms of your general well-being. So not only academic well-being, but your general well-being. Your supervisor is expected to be an expert in your general area of research, because when you've applied for a PhD, if there is no one in that department who can supervise you, usually the department will tell you, well, we don't do this kind of, at least that research topic, that research domain is not covered by any member of staff. So maybe I wish you good luck and apply somewhere else. So your supervisor is expected to be an expert in your general area of research. However, in the specific topic that you're going to work in, no research has been done. That's why you're doing it. Otherwise, it's not going to be novel, right? So again, here, your supervisor he himself wouldn't have done any research in that exact topic, right? So he himself is in the dark. However, what he has compared to the postgraduate student is he has a lot more experience. He's done research before, he has the experience, he can potentially see or notice when things are going wrong before the PGR starts noticing that, things are not working as expected. But the topic itself, the research work itself, he will just be as in the dark as the PGR student. So one of the first thing that I want to say is very often PhD students think of their supervisor as almost like a teacher. But really, is more like a. Earlier, I was talking that this research project is your research project and no one else, right? So your supervisor is there to guide you, is there to give you ideas, right? He's there to mentor you, but he's not there to teach you. In any case, research, you can't teach research, right? There is nothing to teach, because there is nothing that is known about that topic right now. So there is nothing to teach, right? So what can be provided is only guidance. Well, it's almost like, two people in the dark. One person has never been in the dark. The other one knows how to, almost like, knows how to navigate in the dark. What you hope is to get some guidance as to how to start navigating, right? But there is nothing to teach. And indeed, in the US, they are not called supervisors. They are called advisors, right? It's very often what you will see is it's only potentially in the UK that we call those mentors as supervisors. So when you start your PhD, you have to choose a supervisor. You may already have a good one. If you don't, if you think after your first few interactions, I'm not going to get on with my supervisor, you may want to consider changing quickly, right? Because otherwise, you may end up being in trouble, because if you don't have the right support, you may be in trouble. But it's a little bit of a sensitive issue, because you have to make sure that whoever wants to take you will have to speak to his colleague. It's a little bit of a sensitive issue, which is a little bit outside of what we want to talk about today. Your supervisor will discuss your research idea and the project with you at the start, and you will be guided on your literature review. So your supervisor will tell you what are the papers to read initially, so that you have a good starting point. And then in a nutshell, PGR expectation of supervisor, and this is what maybe later on you may want to talk to me about. So I've said what I think PGR expect of supervisors, right? Of course, not all PGRs are the same. Some postgraduate researchers require supervisors to always be available, right? They want the supervisor to be there all the time, to be hold their hands and give them a lot of feedback. But others, there are other postgraduates who wants more like a laissez-faire approach. Well, just give them some idea and then let them go about it the way they want. If they need help, they will come and knock on the door and have a discussion. However approach you want, whether it is very hands-on or very hands-off, I would expect a PGR to always expect supervisor to produce good feedback, right? And also help them write papers at some point in time to advise them on careers, and also to provide some mentoring about especially if they want to go in academia themselves, how to go about supervising students or read reference or write reference letters. So basically to act as a good mentor. However, that's where potentially we start talking a little bit more, right? Supervisor expectation of PGR, right? It's less talk about. However, it's just as important. So the PGR knows the responsibility. Where do you actually sit in that kind of in that process? And also, it helps to optimize meetings that you have with your supervisor. For me personally, one of the things that I expect is maturity, right? So maturity is important at every level. So in some sense, what do I expect? What do I talk about maturity is that the PGR has reached a certain advanced developmental stage, meaning not only kind of theory in the theory sense, at least in the domain, but also maturity of mind, being open to receive advice, to receive criticism, to just kind of be open that it's a common goal that both the supervisor and the student are going to take together. Why is maturity open? Why is maturity important? Well, especially if you're an MSc student, the first question you have to ask yourself, is PhD the right thing for you? Just because there is funding available from your supervisor, just because there is a scholarship available, doesn't mean a PhD is the right thing for you. You need to know, are you ready for the 4-year commitment? If you think, no, I'm not so sure, well, most likely it means PhD is not for you. You will need to know that for 4 years, it's a long, hard slog, right? Are you ready for work very hard? Ultimately, and I've got that on one slide later on, the amount of interaction or the quality of the interaction you have with your supervisor will be determined by the quality of work or effort you put in your own work, right? The better the quality of your input or the more work you put in, the more chance you have that your supervisor will engage with you. Your supervisor will know exactly who are the students who have been working hard, who are the students who almost like trying to blag their way through, and you don't want to be in that second category, because then it will be a long way to try to get the trust of that supervisor back. Are you ready for for disappointment? For example, getting paper rejected, getting harsh criticism. So not only harsh criticism, let's say from your supervisor, but when a paper is rejected, sometimes you get really harsh criticism from the reviewers. Are you ready for that? Yeah. And then also, are you open-minded to take advice? So that's the level of maturity we need to, at least I tend to look for in student, and I know that a lot of colleagues look for these qualities as well, that the student has a maturity level that will allow both of them to communicate at a certain level. Hard work, right? So we expect hard work. Supervisors do not expect Einsteins, right? Well, sometimes we do, right? But what I mean by that is we're not expecting people to be super duper clever, right? But what we expect is the PGRs will put a lot of effort, right, to do their project. So supervisors do expect a lot of hard work, right? I do expect a lot of hard work. I haven't seen many supervisors who say, well, you know what, yeah, you do as you want, as long as you present me with a paper. Supervisors expect to see students working hard because if you're clever, it makes that hard work a little bit easier for you, right? But for most of us, it will be a long, hard work. Supervisors expect PGR to take ownership of the project. And I've got a slide on that about what it means to take ownership of the project. And we expect the PGR to do a lot of reading in depth, understand the problem deeply. We don't expect the student to understand the problem at a superficial level, because since we're going to have to advance the state of the art, we can't advance state of the art if we understand the problem just superficially, right? Because at the end of the day, what the meaning of a PhD means, you're an expert in a given, even in a given domain, right? You're an expert, and no one becomes an expert at a superficial level. You're an expert in something very specific, something very deep, right? Otherwise, if you know a lot of things at a superficial level, well, you're not an expert. You're just what they call jack of all trade, right? What do we understand by ownership of your project? So it is your project, right? It's not the supervisor's project. It's not some one of your colleagues' project. It is your project. Your supervisor will discuss and advise. So this is almost what you tend to call your pride, almost like your pet project. This is something that you're very proud of. So your research project should elicit in you the will to be proactive, meaning you want to make it as successful as it can be, right? So to be able to do that, you want to be able to read as and when required. You want to be able to read broadly. You want to discuss with colleagues. You want to be able to find potentially the best solution. You want to be able to try to get a solution which is advances state of the art. So we expect you to be proactive, right? We don't expect you to come for every small thing. Can I have a meeting just to discuss one thing? Yes, because then it doesn't become it becomes a very slow process. Your PhD becomes very slow if for every single decision you have to take, you will require kind of a consensus or an agreement with your supervisor. So, and because as part of your PhD, the training that you get helps you towards becoming independent. That ability to be proactive helps you towards gaining that independence, right? So when individuals take ownership, it fosters a culture of accountability, productivity, and innovation, right? So when you take ownership, it means you want to be able to do the best. So you're very productive. And because you want it to be the best it can be, that's when you try to innovate, right? And when things are not working well, you take accountability. So yeah, I've tried a few parameters, I've read a few books, but I haven't read all the papers, right? So in some sense, it allows yourself to be accountable as to why the project isn't progressing as quickly as possible, or why the project has progressed in a different way, right? So that's why taking ownership is very, very important. And of course, meetings with the supervisor become more productive when you take ownership, because then rather than talking at a high level, rather than expecting the supervisor to explain, let's say, simple concept, you can discuss at a more detailed level, at a more deeper level about the problems that exist to ensure that your contributions become novel. Taking ownership of your project as well means if you identify a weakness, you try to address it, right? So for example, if you think, well, it takes me a long time to write a paper, well, it means maybe you take some lessons and you undergo training. If you are not comfortable with some tools, for example, I don't know, if you're having to do data analysis and you have to learn Excel, but you're not very good at Excel, again, you try to learn and do some training. So basically, taking ownership means you have to give yourself the best chance of success. You do all the steps that will allow you the best chance of success. However, students also need to have realistic expectation of supervisors. So a supervisor will have several responsibilities at any one point in time. They will have more than a single PGR. They will have other PGR students, not just you. They will have teaching to do, meaning lectures, setting labs, marking exams. They will have administrative duties to do. For example, dealing with admissions for bachelor degree students, masters, PhD students, or loads of different administrative. They are having to review papers. They have presentations to do. They have to attend meetings for the department, or they attend conferences. They've got mentoring to do. They have to manage potentially other research projects. So in a nutshell, your supervisor will have already a lot of things to do. And of course, one of the things that very often the supervisor may also have a family, right? So out of all the things as well, he has to juggle his family issues. I know of a lot of colleagues as well, where their family they have family issues. For example, their kids is very poorly, yet they still have to do all of the things I've mentioned above. They still have to teach, they still have to do review papers, but they still have to look after their family, right? So time with supervisor may be limited, right? And to ensure that you are in a good place, you need to make the most of the time that you have with your supervisor, right? By doing all the things that we have spoken before, like taking ownership, work hard, coming prepared. So supervisors expect PGRs to come in prepared. So at least personally, I don't really like it when if I have a PhD student coming in and not really prepared, right? Or coming in and asking questions at a very superficial level. I like it when the discussions are deep, where we talk about specific aspect that shows to me that that student has already put in quite a lot of effort. So by prepared, I mean either you have sent me a draft to read or questions are already sent, because very often, not myself, but I know a lot of colleagues as well, having questions sent 5 minutes before a meeting, not having the chance to think about it, not having the chance to think about different ways of addressing the problem, it's not going to be a productive time, right? Because if you've been given 1 hour and it takes the supervisor, let's say, half an hour to think about the problem, well, half an hour is already gone, right? So you only have half an hour to actually discuss your problem. So what you want is you already want your supervisor to be given all the inputs, all the problems that you're facing. So your supervisor has the chance to think about it. So, and when you have the meeting, you can start discussing right from the word go, right from the first minute. Being prepared means you have already read the relevant papers. What your supervisor won't want to do is, have you read this paper? No, I haven't. Right? So that's why it's not a very good thing, right? Because then it decreases the trust that your supervisor will have in you, because it shows that maybe your literature review that you have done isn't very good, right? Isn't exhaustive. And meetings or work that are set at the last minute are seldom productive, right? So in a sense, what I'm trying to tell you here is the expectation that supervisors will have of PhD student is that they will know how to make maximum use of the time that he will give to the PhD student. If you want to make the best use of that, be always prepared, right? Don't do things at the last minute, because at the last minute, nothing really works. And the way you do that is by taking ownership of your project. You're always prepared. You've done all the hard work. You come in, you discuss at a deep level. You don't discuss at a superficial level. Supervisors also expect PGRs to develop the right background. So for example, right background meaning you're aware of the latest work, you have developed critical thinking, you have read widely. We expect you to be confident, right? After all, you're going to be the expert in that area. You can't have an expert and that expert is not confident. Then he's no expert, right? So we want you to be confident, even if you make mistake, right? But you need to have the confidence to explain the problem. You have to have the confidence to explain your thinking, your thought process, because by the time you go for your viva, that's what you will have to do. You'll have to explain your thought process about different things. You'll have to explain why did you decide to do something as opposed to do something else. So you have to be confident. In your viva, you won't be able to say, actually, my supervisor told me to do it like that. It just won't cut. You have to be confident to sell the idea, to sell your methodology, to sell your approach to your examiner. So that's in a nutshell what supervisors will tend to expect from postgraduate researchers. And then, of course, in a little bit kind of as an aside, the supervisor will try to create a research environment that will be good for the student, for the whole group. So the supervisor and other in your group, there will be your supervisor, other PGR students, postdocs, other research members, right? And all of them will be working on problems in the same domain, right? They may not be in the same on the same small area, right? But it will be like, let's say, a lot of people may be working in cybersecurity. A lot of people may want to be talking about psychology, all right? Or let's say on let's say the brain, if you're in biomedical science, because all people are going to talk about similar problems. Your group members are going to be a source of knowledge and help. You get the chance to discuss, and your supervisor kind of expect you to be able to do that, so that you already do almost some kind of a filtering. Is my idea good? By discussing with your colleagues, by discussing with other members of the group, you can already start having an idea. Oh no, my idea isn't very good because someone has said, someone has told me about a paper that has a very similar approach, right? By talking to your group members, it allows you to develop your presentation skill, right? How to present your work and how to explain your solutions to other people, but in a less stressful situation. And of course, your supervisor will expect you to attend departmental seminars, colloquiums, build networks, but all this come together with your supervisor setting up the right environment around you. So to conclude, students expect students to mainly take ownership of the project and work hard. Supervisors will help you towards becoming an independent researcher. So that's why, in some sense, supervisors won't spoon feed the PGR student, right? Your supervisor will help you identify an open research problem. How do you go about doing novel research? So he will act more as a guide rather than a teacher who will hold your hands. PhD study is hard work. You need to be really motivated. As supervisors will not be motivated as well, right? So if you're not motivated, you're not putting in the effort, you will notice that your supervisors will not be motivated as well. They go, oh, I'm always busy. Your supervisor will always be busy, right? Just because they know it's like pulling teeth. There is no point in talking to that student because the work hasn't been done properly, right? And PGR will need to put at least as much dedication in the project as the supervisor. So like I've said, if you put in a lot of effort, expect to see a lot of reciprocity from your supervisor. You put in little effort, you expect the same. Similar to, in some sense, if you don't buy good ingredients, you can't expect to have really good kapsa. You buy super good ingredient, you have a top kapsa. Jazakallah khair, and that concludes my talk.
Jazakallah khair, and thank you for the last example with kapsa.